Hello, my name is Lionel Grant II, your host for the 50-Yard Line Show, the sports talk show that focuses on the SEC and other football throughout the conference and throughout the nation. My name is Lionel Grant II, and I'm joined with Jonathan McMath. Missed you last time. It was great to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Looking forward to talking some football.
Excellent, excellent. Well, in your absence, I guess Alabama still rolled. They took the show on the road, went to Duke, and did an amazing job. Now they take the show on the road and they go to Fayetteville, Arkansas to take on the number 10th ranked team in the nation. And from what I understand, students are camping out, packing out, trying to get tickets to the game. And that makes it exciting. What do you think about the upcoming game between the number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide and the Arkansas Razorbacks?
I'll tell you what, I think Alabama's going to have their hands full. That's what I know. And they have to just forget about all the external factors. You've got the red out going on. You've got, Bobby Petrino and Ryan Mallett and a lot of Heisman talk. So Alabama's just got to go in there. They've got to do their thing. They've got to stay balanced on offense, on defense. They have to get some more of a pass rush to slow down Ryan Mallett.
Oh, definitely. Of course, he's putting up Heisman-esque kind of numbers. Of course, last year he was on an excellent pace until he faced the Alabama Crimson Tide. Of course, the question everybody has with the Alabama Crimson Tide is the secondary. What does the Alabama Crimson Tide have to do in order to kind of slow down this passing attack of Arkansas?
That's a good question. I think it all starts up front. I just alluded to the pass rush. I think Marcel Darius, he's back. He's got his second game underneath him now. That whole defensive line's got to get a lot of pressure on Ryan Mallett. And the defense, they can't give away their schemes too early. They can't give away when they're going to blitz, when they're not. They've got to disguise their blitzes very well. And they've got to close the gaps. There's been some gaps in the secondary as of late. And Alabama, probably the best quarterback they face so far is Robert Bolden, and he's just a true freshman for Penn State. But now you've got Ryan Mallett coming in, who's had 13 consecutive 200-yard passing games, and he leads the NCAA in 360 yards per game. So they've got to disguise their coverages a lot better, and they can't give up the big play.
Yeah, you alluded to Penn State's quarterback, true freshman Bolden, and one thing that we have to remember when Alabama faced Penn State, he was able to move the ball down the field. In fact, if it wasn't for Alabama's red zone defense, and hit with some big plays, Penn State would have probably put up some more points, but they did an excellent job. But again, he was able to find some of those soft spots in the defense.
And another thing is Robert Bolden's receivers didn't help him out, Eddie. In Arkansas, they've got Greg Childs, they've got Joe Adams. Their tight end leads the NCAA in active receptions and receiving yards over 1,000. That's DJ Williams. So Ryan Mallett's got some big targets to throw it to, and those boys, they're SEC caliber wide receivers, and they're not going to drop the ball that many times.
Definitely. And Ryan Mallett is surrounded by an excellent offensive line that gives him plenty of protection to throw the ball. So we definitely, as you mentioned before, Marcel Darius and company have got to do an excellent job of penetrating that front five, getting some pressure on him to cause him to throw the ball before he wants to throw it.
Yeah, and I think if Alabama has anything going their way, it's that Arkansas is one-dimensional, or at least that's what they've shown so far. We were talking a little bit about it before the show that really they're averaging, I think, less than 100 rushing yards a game. Dennis Johnson, their main running back, hasn't really shown much promise. So a lot of it's in the hands of Ryan Mallett, and if Alabama can stop Ryan Mallett, they can stop that Bobby Petrino offense.
Definitely. We've been talking about Arkansas and their passing attack. Let's talk a little bit about Alabama because we've got a quarterback on the other end, Greg McElroy, who's been putting up some great numbers. And we have to always remember, I have to kind of pinch myself, this guy's never lost a game. And we're always worried about the upcoming game, upcoming opponent.
Yeah, well, Greg McElroy sort of just flying under the radar a little bit, probably just the way he likes it. And you got to think about Alabama. They're leading the nation in offense and in scoring offense. At least they're ahead of Arkansas. Everybody hears about Arkansas's offense. Well, Alabama's played just as good of an opponent in Penn State than, in my opinion, Arkansas did of Georgia. So I think Alabama, they've got Julio Jones as well. They've got Darius Saint, Marquise Mays, and now McElroy, I think he's even more comfortable. He's even able to make more checks. So he's able to dump the ball off to more receivers and spread it out a little bit. And then when you talk about the running game, what is there to say that we haven't already said? Trent Richardson, Mark Ingram, two dynamic backs, probably the best duo in America. So even with the offensive line there to protect McElroy, he's really got all the weapons at his disposal.
Yeah, I don't even know what to call them. Tag team, dynamic duo, 1-2 punch, thunder and lightning. I mean, it's just amazing what they're able to do. One of the key statistics as we go into this game is that Arkansas is the 98th team in Division I or the FBS or whatever they call the division now, football, and that's really a good statistic in terms of Alabama running. What do you think about that?
I think that's a huge matchup to watch because if Alabama's defense can't stop Arkansas's offense, I think it's going to all come down to in between the trenches. And if Alabama's able to run the ball, control the clock, keep that Arkansas offense off the field, that's just another way they could win the game.
Definitely. Now, we talked about the running game, the powerful running game of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Of course, we've got probably one of the strongest, most prolific receivers in college football in Julio Jones. And last week he showed how not only was he strong, but he was a possession receiver as well. Of course, we got Hanks, and we got, of course, Marquise Mays. Let's talk about the passing attack.
Yeah, Alabama's passing attack. I mean, they did a great job last week against Duke, and Julio Jones, I think, has really rubbed off on these receivers in the terms that, yeah, they can go up and they can catch the ball, but they block really well. Also, every time Alabama runs a football, you always see a wide receiver downfield getting off blocks, maybe even making a second block, and that springs Ingram and Richardson and the rest of the Tide backs free. But I think the key thing this week for the Alabama wide receivers is to be patient, and especially Hanks and Mays. Julio Jones is going to get double teamed. They're not going to let him beat the Razorbacks. So I think Darius Hanks especially could have a big game for Alabama.
Definitely. Of course, a balanced attack. You've got to be able to run the ball, and you've got to be able to pass the ball, and especially when you're in the Southeastern Conference, you've got to be able to run the ball to set that up. Now, what about special teams? Because, all coaches talk about 3 phases of the game: running, passing, offense, defense, and, of course, special teams. Special teams for Alabama did an awesome job with the punt return and the kickoff return last week. How important would that be against the Arkansas Razorbacks?
Well, I think it's very important. Trent Richardson, of course, he had a kickoff return for a touchdown, the first since 2004 when Tyrone Prothro did it for Alabama. So that was good to see. I think it's big because Alabama's going to want to have field position in this game, especially if Arkansas is able to score a lot. You hope you don't have to return that many kicks, but you're probably going to have to. And I think it's going to be huge for Cade Foster as well. Whenever Alabama does get into Arkansas territory, to put some points up on the board, because I'm afraid that this isn't going to be a 14-10 type game. It may be more of a 35-24 or 41-28 type of ball game.
I saw something last week in that Duke game I haven't seen in a long time. And of course, you mentioned Foster was a good, powerful kicker. In fact, played linebacker in high school. Not only after he kicked the ball, he went down and made the tackle too. So I was like, wow, I haven't seen that in a long time. So special teams, of course, is an important factor. Let's talk a little bit about the injuries. Any particular injuries that we have this week in terms of Alabama looking good with Upshaw?
Yep, Alabama's looking good on the injury front this week. I think everybody's going to be full force this come Saturday.
Well, we're excited about that as the #1 Alabama Crimson Tide take on the 10th-ranked Arkansas Razorback in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Next, we want to talk about the #3 team in the nation, one of the most controversial teams. I mentioned earlier in our broadcast that if they want to be considered big-time college program, you got to play against the big-time opponents. And, of course, they had an early showing at the Kickoff Classic. We're talking about Boise State, the #3 ranked team in the nation, as they took on the Virginia Tech Hokies. Later on, we found out maybe that wasn't such a decisive win after Virginia Tech kind of went down to John Madison. So, but they do take on the Oregon State Beavers. So, how's that look?
I tell you, it's going to be an easy game for Boise State. I really hate to say it, but for Boise State, they've just got too many weapons. They haven't lost a game since 2001 on their home turf. Mike Riley, who's actually a graduate of the University of Alabama, decided, hey, let's paint our practice field blue. Maybe that'll help us out a little bit. I think you're really buying into the myth if you do that. I think you're even putting more psychological issues in your players' heads. I think Kellen Moore and Boise State and Chris Peterson's just going to be too much for Oregon State to win this game. I do think if Oregon State can win the game, it's going to be because of Jacquez Rogers and his brother.
Oh, definitely. The Rogers twins, the Rogers brothers. But I definitely we wanted to watch this game. I don't know if it means anything to run on blue turf versus green turf, but they did that to kind of assist them in that area. So that's another game we want to watch on Saturday. Of course, we're coming back to the Southeastern Conference, and a game that I'm really going to watch and really interested in is the South Carolina Gamecocks. Now, they have South Carolina Gamecocks ranked as a 12th team in the nation. I think that's a little low from what I've seen. Of course, taking on Auburn Tigers, who, in my opinion, kind of struggled last week with the Clemson Tigers. Let's talk about that particular game, that showdown.
Yeah, well, Auburn, they did struggle a little bit against Clemson, but they still got the win. South Carolina, in my opinion, has looked a little bit more impressive in their wins than Auburn has. So I think the key thing for South Carolina going into Jordan-Hare Stadium is running the football and setting up the pass. Because of the play-action pass, the senior quarterback, Stephen Garcia's looked pretty good so far this season. And that Auburn defense, if South Carolina can run the ball on them, they're a little bit shaky in the passing attack. So if they can throw Auburn off balance at any, Stephen Garcia can get the job done. And then on the other side of things with Auburn, Cam Newton, there's not much more to say than he is a playmaker. And if South Carolina can take Cam Newton out of the game, South Carolina can win it.
Right, you mentioned about Garcia, who's been kind of a much maligned quarterback for South Carolina, but now we're seeing him. We're seeing a much more mature Stephen Garcia, and he's able to really run that offense the way Steve Spurrier likes to be run. Of course, you talk about the running game. Lattimore, true freshman, and I don't know if this means anything, but Barbara Dooley said he runs the ball like Herschel Walker. So,
and Bo Jackson.
And Bo Jackson, yes. So that's going to be very interesting as the Gamecocks take on the Auburn Tigers. Any key points that you think is really key for South Carolina to go in to Auburn and come out victorious?
Well, I really think it's going to be upstairs. It's going to be in the booth, and it's going to be Ellis Johnson and that defense. If Ellis Johnson and the defense can slow down that Gus Malzahn attack, it's sort of going to be Johnson versus Malzahn. Whoever wins that matchup, ultimately their team's going to win the game.
Definitely going to be a chess match down in the Plains. Of course, the game that is always exciting in the Southeastern Conference is when the West Virginia Mountaineers come in and take on the LSU Tigers.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a game. We've got the number 22 ranked team coming into LSU, who's ranked number 15. And I think that's kind of gracious, too, as it relates to the polls. I kind of feel South Carolina should be put up a little bit, and maybe Florida should come down just a notch based on their play. But West Virginia, of course, always led by the excellent running of Noah Levine. Seems like he's been there forever.
It does.
But let's talk about the LSU and West Virginia matchup.
I'll tell you what, West Virginia, now they've got a good running back in Noah Levine, but also someone you may not have heard much of is Geno Smith, the quarterback there. I think he can be the difference maker ultimately in this game, going down into the Bayou. If he doesn't make mistakes, West Virginia can come out of the Bayou with a victory. On the other hand, LSU's got a great defense. So if John Chavis can get that defense ready to go and disrupt that fast-flying offense of West Virginia, I think LSU can take the game. With Patrick Peterson there at cornerback returning kicks, he's definitely a playmaker. And then Jordan Jefferson really hadn't got on track all year long. If he can get on track, LSU might actually find that missing piece to the puzzle.
Right. Peterson definitely elevated his game against the University of North Carolina and showed you his athletic ability and really let us know that that's a position that you just can't just throw on him and run over him. Excellent athlete in Peterson. West Virginia has basically have to have a perfect game in Death Valley, and that's going to be real tough. It's
going to be extremely tough. You know, anytime you play at night, and it's 8 o'clock kickoff, by the way, and you got those crazy Cajun fans down there, it's going to be extremely hard for them to be able to hear at the line of scrimmage, and everybody's going to have the juices flow in that game, and you just got to hope if you're West Virginia that you do play a perfect game, you don't turn the ball over, and you have good clock management. You don't give up the big play either.
Right. Well, Jonathan McMath, we kind of went down the games, and I'm excited about this week. My name is Lionel Grant II, your host for the 50-Yard Line Show.